About Monty Philbrick using city maintainer spreading or leveling Paul Markowski's residence of the Millings. I made no such accusation. In your packets I have delivered to you, read the emails of exactly what was said. There was no accusation by me. I made no accusations. In the fall of 2016, after I learned that the city board had received large amounts of millings from NDOR, I personally appeared to the Ward Street Committee and requested that the city put millings down on 10th Street. I personally made that request before the committee due to the fact that the 3rd Ward, where 10th Street is located, has no representation on the street committee. In reviewing my audio tape, I described 10th Street as a street that has been washing out over several years with drainage off the hill and with water crossing over the street from one side to the other, creating ruts. People living on that street have had to lower their mailboxes so the mailman may reach the mailbox from his car. And cars were dragging their bumpers when people drove into their driveways due to the washout. I also stated that Bob Whitefoot, a handicapped individual, as defined by Nebraska Revised Statutes 20-313, in a battery-powered wheelchair, can't leave the end of his driveway to cross the street to get to his mail, or to traverse to Q Street, to hard surface street, when the slightest amount of moisture lands on that street and turns that street into mud, creating an obstacle and a barrier. Now, in each of your packets, I have pictures, photographs of 2-block area of 10th Street. And I think you folks really need to take a look at them and consider just how bad that street is. That's it. I also stated to the Ward Street Committee that one of Bob's enjoyments was to coach Little League baseball and to watch the kids play baseball at Russell Park at the other end of town. But when the road turns to muck, he can't leave his driveway because it damages his battery-powered wheelchair along with the gravel on the mucky road. I invited the Ward Street Committee members and other Ward City Council members present to come and look for themselves. Quote, I would be happy to show you what I'm talking about, and you can also talk to Bob, end quote. No one ever took me up on that invitation. Councilmember Dan Petska stated to Councilmember Jeremy Sedlacci, who heard my request, but he's not on the street committee, that street is on the list. I understood this to mean that 10th Street, where Bob Whitefoot lives, was on the list to receive millings to create a hard surface street. At the end of the street committee meeting, I spoke directly with Paul Markowski, superintendent, who made the statement to me that the city had a lot of millings left. I left the committee meeting with the understanding that 10th Street was on the list to receive millings that Councilmember Dan Petska spoke of. On February 16, 2017, I emailed City of Ward with a number of questions. A copy of those emails has been supplied to you also in your envelopes. As of this date, there has been no response from the City of Ward, the Street Committee, or Paul Markowski, Superintendent, to my emails other than the Street Committee's statement. This was not a priority street because it is a lightly traveled, graveled road. Obviously, the Street Committee missed the point that I was making. I was not making the request due to the amount of traffic that this gravel road experiences, but was making the point of the condition of 10th Street that must be utilized by a handicapped, wheelchair-bound individual where he resides. I have supplied photos of 10th Street where Bob Whitefoot, this wheelchair-bound, handicapped individual, must attempt to traverse a half a block to a paved surface with the slightest amount of moisture turns the road to muck. And Paul Markowski, superintendent's personally newly paved driveway acquired from city resources and assets. The additional photo on 10th Street is where Miss Dolly Rogers, a widowed senior citizen in her 90s that utilized a walker to assist her in walking and attempting to get to her mailbox on a mucky, muddy road. Miss Cynthia Ackerman, daughter of Mrs. Rogers, also living at that same home, utilizes a walker. These ladies have also asked me to personally deliver a letter to them from to the Ord City Council, a copy of which you all have in your packets, and the original is to the clerk. Also on 10th Street, Mr. Jerome Turek at times has to utilize a walker to cross the same rutty, mucky road to get to his mailbox, located across the street. Nebraska Revised Statute 20-126, Statement of Policy. It is the policy of this state to encourage and enable physically disabled persons to participate fully in social and economic life of the state. Nebraska Revised Statute 20-127, rights enumerated. Number 1, physically disabled persons has the same right as any other persons to fully and freely use streets, highways, sidewalks, walkways, public buildings, public facilities, and other public places. Number 2, physically disabled persons is entitled to full and equal accommodations, advantages, facilities, and privileges at other places to which the general public is invited, subject only to conditions and limitations established by law and applicable alike to all persons. The American Disabilities Act, Title II, hereafter referred to as the ADA, has set forth guidelines covering all activities in state and local governments, regardless of the government size. The ADA Title II requires state and local governments to give people with disabilities an equal opportunity to benefit from all services and activities. Public entities are not required to take actions that would result in undue financial burdens. They are required to make reasonable modifications to policies, practice, and procedures where necessary to avoid discrimination. In reviewing the ADA Title II, a statement of policy, and the statement of policy by the state of Nebraska, I cannot find any supportive dialogue that would support the Ord City Mayor, the Ord City Council, the Ord Street Committee, or Paul Markowski Superintendent's determination that Paul Markowski Superintendent's driveway has a priority over a city street that is utilized by handicapped individuals, rather than providing those individuals with an equal opportunity to benefit from the Millings for Water deal, providing freedom of movement to the handicapped and eliminating the mud obstacles and barriers. Eliminating the obstacles and barriers. When you take into consideration, the Millings came to the city in exchange for water, a resource, an asset, provided by the city taxpayers and ratepayers, transported and dumped by city trucks and NDOR. The only out-of-pocket cost to the city would have been to spread those millings, as was done at other locations throughout the city, and at the same time eliminate the financial burden and maintenance of the occasional blading of 10th Street, the muddy road. Therefore, pursuant to Nebraska Revised Statute 20-126, 20-127, and the ADA Title II, the City of Ord needs to eliminate the physical barriers spoken of here in the same manner as Paul Markowski Superintendent's newly paved driveway and other city streets that have received millings to prevent further discrimination against handicapped individuals. To continue this, I have read Mayor Roger Goldfish's letter to the Auditor of Public Accounting, dated February 13, 2017. And for the most part, I agree with what Mayor Roger Goldfish has written. I will fill in some details that are being ignored. The road millings were in exchange for water. a resource, an asset of the city of Ord, and provided by the city of Ord to NDOR to be used in the highway milling process. This Millings for Water deal was constructed and entered into by Paul Markowski, superintendent, having official care and control of the utilities department on behalf of the city of Ord, and Gene Arduzer, NDOR supervisor, on behalf of NDOR. The specific date of the agreement is unknown, as the contract was verbal and lacking any specific unit of measure, an example, gallons of water in exchange for a specific unit of measure of tons of millings or truckloads of millings. Additionally, there is no factual record establishing an approval or authorization by a street committee, the Ord City Council, authorizing Paul Markowski, superintendent, to enter into any agreement or contract with NDR in the water for millings dealing. This exchange of resources and assets did occur in late summer or fall of 2016. The millings being transported, hauled, by the city of Ord and NDR dump trucks to several locations in the city of Ord. These locations have been identified as the lagoon dump site, the power plant dump site, and several streets within the city of Ord. As the state highway milling process moved forward, the lagoon dump site and the power plant dump site began to fill up with truckloads of millings. While at the lagoon dump site, and after arriving at that location in the city of Ord provided pickup, and while on city time, Paul Markowski, superintendent, met with Gene Arduzer. There they had a conversation as to where to go with the additional millings. Gene Arduzer suggested that the dump trucks, city and NDOR, begin dumping directly on the city streets that were to receive the millings, overlaying the street, creating a hard surface. Paul Markowski, superintendent, then gave a list of streets to NDOR supervisor Gene Arduzer with the additional statement, quote, "I would like to have 2 loads dumped on my driveway. I can't have the city trucks dumped there because Roland Schaefer is watching and he will report me for using city equipment," end quote. Of course, Roland Schaefer is a local resident having a business close proximity to Paul Markowski's personal residence and driveway. Gene Arduzer, in order to comply with the agreement and exchange of assets with the city of Ord, did begin having NDOR trucks dump on the city streets, along with the city dump trucks. Gene Arduzer did direct 2 loads of millings to be dumped on Paul Markowski, superintendent's personal residential driveway, per Markowski superintendent's direction, utilizing NDOR trucks. After receiving these 2 loads of millings, Paul Markowski, superintendent, again directed NDOR supervisor Gene Arduzer to dump the 3rd load of millings on Paul Markowski, superintendent's personal residential driveway. This, I believe, is a violation of the Political Accountability and Disclosure Act, specifically 49-14-101.01, paragraph 2. The act prohibits a public employee from using public assets for personal gain as follows. A public official or public employee shall not use or authorize the use of personnel, resources, property, or funds under his or her official care or control other than in accordance with prescribed constitutional, statutory, and regulatory procedures, and use such items that other than compensation provided by law for personal financial gain. Per section 7 of that same statute, any person violating this section shall be guilty of a class 3 misdemeanor. Section 49-1442, any act defines public employee to mean an employee of the state or political subdivision thereof. Paul Markowski, superintendent, clearly and obviously realizes the use of city-owned equipment and personnel in delivering millings to his personal residential driveway was a violation of Nebraska law. but chose to ignore the fact that city-owned resources, the water being property of the city of Ord and an asset of the city of Ord, under his care and control, was the medium of exchange in acquiring the millings that were being used to create a hard surface personal driveway at his personal residence and a personal financial gain to him. I, for one, would like to know from the mayor and the Ord City and Council what they intend to do about this.
I have a couple of questions first, Guy.
Yes, sir.
When this millings got hot, I was informed that you have millings.
I'm sorry, Roger, could you speak up?
I said, I was informed that you had millings on the east side of your property,
Where you parked your
where you
truck?
parked your truck. Could you enlighten me as to how you acquired them?
Sure, I bought those from the gravel pit.
From the what? Gravel pit?
Yeah,
Okay, now let's get back
and they were
to,
delivered by the gravel pit.
okay, now, the gravel, 10th Street. When was the last time you talked to Bob Whitefoot about these millings on that 10th Street? How long has it been approximately, do you know?
I've talked to him periodically since last summer.
About the millings on 10th Street, you went over and talked to him about it.
Yes.
Thursday, the 23rd, at 2:30 in the afternoon, Paul and I was discussing some things in my office over there. Bob Whitefoot called him on another matter, and they were discussing it. And Paul put his phone on speaker because Bob had changed the subject to the millings on 10th Street. He said he didn't want millings on 10th Street. He said, gravel's fine. He says, Monty of the street department takes very good care of me. Bob I heard him say that. You just lied to me.
No, I did not lie.
Oh, yeah.
You said
No, I did not
you
lie.
said he wanted millings.
No, that's not. Bob Whitefoot does at times have a comprehensive problem. He has at times has issues.
No, let's go back.
Yes, he does, Mr.
You lied to me
Goldfish.
because he told me, I heard him say it.
Nobody's lied to you. Nobody's lied at all, Mr. Goldfish. The fact is, this city has discriminated against the handicapped individuals. Now, you are choosing to single out Bob Whitefoot. What about Dolly Roger? Did you bother to look at those pictures?
Yes, I did. And when the frost goes out in the spring, we lose even the asphalts, they're milling streets because they get so soft, we can't do nothing with them for about a week, 2 weeks.
You think this goes on all the time?
I was down there the other day. I was down there the other day when it rained in front of Bob's house. Pickup tracks that far from his concrete driveway were only about a quarter of an inch deep. Pickup tracks.
When did it rain?
That
Sufficient enough to
morning.
make that
That
road
morning.
wet?
That morning. I've been
What
down
morning
there ever
was that?
since you
What
started
morning was that?
complaining. I've been going down and watching that street.
What morning was that?
I'd have to go back and look, but it was, I go down there every
So let me
day.
understand this, Mr. Mayor. What you're telling me is that it's okay for your
I'm
utility
not saying that.
superintendent.
I'm not saying that.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
What I'm
And
saying
you are
is,
trying to single me out as being some sort of a liar?
you I just told me.
Absolutely not.
I heard his voice
You
tell me
you
that.
want you need to take a good hard reflection as to what kind of people you are, that you know that these people down on that street have trouble walking and getting around in their wheelchair, and if any of you know, I'm glad you're entertained, Mr. Petska. You really think this is funny?
No,
I don't believe it is funny. I don't believe it's funny when I don't believe that man is entitled to be laughed at by someone like
And
you.
you said, yes, you did not talk to Robert.
I beg your pardon?
You heard me.
No, I did not hear you.
You know, I don't think this is worth, let's move on, Roger.
Well, that's fine. I am assuming there'll be no action, so I will move forward from there.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say one more thing. Those streets were recognized as areas because they were put on the paving plan when we applied for that grant
Yes, they
Okay,
were.
here's my next
and failed
question.
to put it in.
Can we just gap pave that street?
Yes, it
Just
could
concrete it?
be, it could be
Be done with
done.
it, so we don't have to mess with this anymore? We just pave it?
That's
We have
it.
14 blocks
That
this
sounds
summer.
like-
Move one of them to gap pave it?
We got a contractor in town.
Now, we had this discussion some years ago. What are we waiting for? Let's do it. We had this discussion several years ago. Let's do it.
Is it on the 1 and 6 all?
Yes, it is definitely on the 1 and 6. It was in the 1 year, but we wanted to help the, lower income people in that area and get a grant. You know, that's why we ran that survey. And then something happened that our survey was not called legal per se.
I believe,
So
Mr.
we took that
Markowski,
out, so.
Mr.
But it is on the 1 and 6 plan.
It is a 6-year plan, so you would have to amend the 1-year plan.
Yeah, we got to amend it, we can.
I believe the problem was with that, Mr. Markowski, was that a lot of people have lost trust in the city as far as having their financial information kept confidential.
Oh, I don't think so, Mr. Brock, because we had a 99% return on that survey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, didn't you say it took 100%?
No,
I believe you did. Thank you for your time.
Thank you too.
Sales tax loan modification, 2006.
Sorry, we don't.
You can strike
Yeah,
that.
we can take that one off the agenda. but we'll-
Thank you.
Okay. Amend the petition to disconnect land from the city limits. We need to, and somebody's trying to take land, we need to take action as whether to allow it or disallow it.
It's the same thing as before, it's just an amended petition, so the statute requires the council to consider removing the land from the city limits, so we just need a motion to either allow that or not allow it, so we can either move on with the lawsuit or not.
I don't mean to interrupt while you're on this subject. How can I acquire about 4 truckloads of this Millings legitimately?
Talk to gravel pit.
Yeah, talk to gravel pit. They get some, they buy some.
Thank you.
We want to make a motion to approve or deny that losing the land out of the city limits.
Haven't we already agreed that?
We need a motion, we need to have
Yes,
on
this is an
record.
amended petition, so we need a new motion.
Well, I'll make a new motion that we stay with the same,
Not allow.
yeah.
Second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Hetzke,
Yes.
Kusick,
Yes.
Sabachick,
Yes.
Grayson. Yes. Kellen.
Corey's not here, but we had speed limits on East Highway 11. I don't know if it's on there.
There's a deal with that.
Okay, yeah. Need to look at that because we've been worried about accidents out there where it's up to 50 mile an hour and above. Corey's driven this a number of times. I went out and drove it. I think where he's got 30 on the Pizza Hut Inn, right now it's 40 at the top of the hill and 30 at the bottom, and the trucker